JP, good to see you, brother. How you doing? Good evening, Miles and all CMF. Let's go. Good evening, Professor Miles. Funky brother, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Comatose, hey Miles and CMF, good to see you. Comatose, how you doing? How you been? Hi Miles, is this the new time now? Yes, it is, Paul. Good to see you. The live show used to be 11:30 p.m. Monday to Friday. Now it's only at 10 p.m. Monday to Friday. We changed the times. We did a vote, and the majority vote was for 10 p.m. So we changed the times. Good to see you. T, hello Miles. Hope you're well. I'm doing great. T, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Hi Miles, CMF. Pablo, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Okay. Let's do intro, disclaimer, and by that time everyone's tuned in for the first part of the live show. So, welcome to the CMF Live if you're watching this for the first time ever. The CMF stands for Crypto Miles Family. My name is Miles, and essentially you can tune to this live Monday to Friday where I tell you about the most recent news that's happening around the world in terms of cryptocurrencies, CBDCs, AI, politics, regulations, pretty much everything you need to know about what's happening around you and how close we are to this digital future. The disclaimer of this live, as always, is not financial advice, not political advice, and whatever I say is only for entertainment purposes. And also, we do live Q&As on this live, which means if you ever do have any questions or even a statement to make, put it down inside the comment section. More than happy to read it out, essentially, if it's a statement or if it's a question, more than happy to help you out. Now, a lot of things have been happening again, essentially during this week in general. We do still have the Iran and Israel situation ongoing with the US now getting essentially involved. We have the Fed reports to go through on tonight's live, essentially where the Fed is standing. It seems like they're still standing on the fence. And Trump is not very happy about Jerome Powell once again not doing his job, which is essentially rate cuts. A lot of things to cover on tonight's live of what's happening around the world and the geopolitical tensions that are still going on. Now, before we go through the first part on tonight's live, which is essentially all the political news that's happening right now, let's go inside the comment section first, and then we go straight into the first news of tonight's live. Let's see where we're at. Come on, good to see you, brother. How you doing? How you been? Kerry, what's up, Miles? What's up, CMF? Let's go. How you doing, brother? How you been? Hi, Miles. Great to see you back, mate. I've watched your last two on recordings on the day, as I didn't know you changed your time. Adi, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Yeah, the live show from now on is at 10 p.m. London time. Good evening, Miles and CMF. Good to see you, Belexopi. How you doing? How you been? Finally, I'm off work so I can watch the live show. Let's go, come on. And Belexopi, good to see you. How you doing? Sorry, I'm late. Woodhouse, don't worry about it. Actually, your perfect timing. Now, first news on tonight's live. Also, just before we go through the first news, I just want to say to everybody, thank you so much to everyone who has already liked this live and retweeted this live on X, if you're watching this on X. And if you watch this on YouTube, thanks so much to everyone who's also liked the live as well. If you haven't done that, CMF members, take 5 seconds to like the live and retweet it. Now, let's go through the first news on tonight's live, which is regarding the Iran, Israel, and US situation, which is still impacting the crypto market space, the stock market, because of all the geopolitical tensions that's happening between these two or three nations. So here it is. Iran's leader essentially rejecting the US demands of warns of consequences. So Iran's leader essentially said that he will not surrender to the United States and he will not surrender to Israel. He will not surrender to anyone. And he's also slightly thrown some shade and threats towards Donald Trump and the United States, which again made the market a bit volatile, the crypto market space and the stock market, due to this geopolitical tension rises. So here it is. Khomeini, the leader of Iran, he did a televised statement, emphasized that Iran's refusal to accept an imposed peace or war, directly addressing the US's essentially questioning. The Ayatollah statement comes aimed escalating tensions with the US, affecting global geopolitical stability. As he stated, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei declared on June 18th today, 2025, that Iran will not surrender, aimed US pressure, stating any attack by the United States would lead to irreversible consequences. His stance essentially marks a significant moment in escalating tensions, and also between Iran and the US, with implications on regional stability and global markets. The entire global market right now is being affected by this war. The Iranian nation stands firm against imposed war, just as it stands firm against an imposed peace, and this nation will not surrender to anyone in the face of this essentially situation. I just want to put one thing clear. The leader of Iran, Ayatollah essentially Khomeini, does not speak for the Iranian people. He only speaks for himself, to be fairly honest. In response, the US, essentially President Donald Trump, signaled potential military involvements, marking a heightened level of essentially confrontation. His comments highlighted ongoing power dynamics and the fragile balance essentially in the Middle East in terms of geopolitical tensions. Trump made bold statements on potential US military actions, stressing the control over the skies per essentially an Access report. The Iranian nation stands firm against imposed war, just as it will stand firm against any opposed peace. And anytime a major regional power like Iran essentially issues a strong warning directed at a global superpower like the United States, it immediately heightens geopolitical risk. Geopolitical risk refers to the possibility that political events will affect the market space, the stock market and the crypto market space. This essentially can include wars, attacks, or even just increased political instability and diplomatic friction between different nations. Khomeini's declaration that Iran will not accept an imposed peace or war suggests a refusal to be directed to, implying essentially that any external attempt or force to specify outcomes could be met with resistance. The mentions of serious and irreversible consequences in response to a US attack is particularly significant. The vague but menacing phrase leaves room for much interpretation, potentially encompassing essentially a range of retaliatory attacks and cyber attacks targeting shipping lanes, proxy essentially forces, or even direct military engagements. Such uncertainty is precisely what drives up geopolitical risk, premiums, and markets. Investors dislike uncertainty, and the essentially prospects of escalation in a volatile region like the Middle East is a major source of concern. According to data also from blockchain analytics firm Sentiment, BTC has experienced a 4 to 6% drop since these geopolitical situations have arisen, and about over $200 billion from the crypto market cap has been completely wiped out during these essentially dramatic situations. Sentiment's data highlights how social volume for Israel and Iran surged, essentially indicating growing concerns and uncertainty among crypto market participants. The firm described a wave essentially of bearish sentiments emerging during a peak of tensions, pushing Bitcoin down to around $104,000 or $105,000 range. Despite the initial panic, BTC has stabilized quickly, supported by ongoing ETF inflows and the absence of a major military escalation. This behavior essentially mirrors past geopolitical tensions, including Bitcoin's reaction to Russia's essentially invasion of Ukraine back in 2022 and the Israel and Palestine conflict back in essentially late 2022. Also, both events were essentially BTC initially dropped but found support shortly after. Sentiment noted that while macroeconomic factors like tariff negotiations remain in play, the Israel and Iran tensions represents a uniquely essentially impactful geopolitical flashpoint. They warn that such real essentially world conflicts are likely to fuel unpredictable price swings inside of the crypto market space and the stock market. As this situation evolves, Sentiment encourages investors to monitor social trends and sentiment also trackers to anticipate market shifts during heightened geopolitical risk situations. The research team also highlights potential economic pressures from US policies affecting crypto markets. Historical trends indicate increased asset essentially movements post-crisis, reflecting essentially market volatility often observed during geopolitical tensions. Just want to point out one major factor. As the Iran and Israel situation is escalating with the US now being involved and the B2 planes are on the way, on the other side of the spectrum, we're getting crypto regulations passed, which we're going to talk about on tonight's live. So there's a lot of things also happening that are quite positive for crypto space, but crypto space can't react to it as it should be doing because of all the heightened tension that's going on. The faster essentially Israel and the United States take out the leader of the essentially Iran, Ayatollah essentially Khomeini, the faster they take him out, well, the faster we can move on, the crypto market and the stock market can restore back to its price points and start climbing back up, and also being, reacting positive to all the news that's around in terms of regulations and so on. But because this geopolitical situation is still going on, I'll be honest, what's happening inside the crypto space and the stock market is all Ayatollah Khomeini's fault. Honestly, it's not Israel's fault, it's not the United States' fault, and so on. Also, I just want to say one thing. On yesterday's live, I said essentially thank you to Israel for essentially taking out the Iranian leaders and the commanders and helping the Iranian people. And some people might have got offended by me saying, thank you, Israel, for helping out the Iranian people. One thing you have to understand where I'm coming from is that the Ayatollah of Iran makes, believe it or not, he makes Benjamin, essentially Netanyahu, look like Mother Teresa. The leader of Iran makes Israel's leader look like Mother Teresa. Not saying the leader of Israel is not a bad person either. Everybody's a bad person. They're all politicians. But the leader of Iran makes this man look like Mother Teresa, comparing these two together, because what the leader of Iran has done to the Iranian people, as I said previously, cannot be said on live at all. But that's where I'm coming from when I say thank you, Israel, for helping out the Iranian people, because you really don't understand what this man and the people this man hired have done to the Iranian people, to the Iranian women, to the Iranian children. These are things that I cannot say on live at all, because it's just too... There's just no words to describe it, the way and the things that they have done to the Iranian people. So that's what I mean when I say thank you to Israel for helping out the Iranian people. And I know some people were essentially maybe shocked or essentially, saying, how can you say this and so on? But you've got to understand where I'm coming from. The leader of Iran does make, in my point of view, the leader of Israel look like Mother Teresa. Comparing these two together cannot be compared. What the Ayatollah of Iran has done is 1 billion times worse what essentially Benjamin Netanyahu has done in his entire lifetime. Believe it or not. And the things that you know what? I can't say these things on live. I was about to, but I'm not going to. But that's what I meant when I said thank you, Israel, on yesterday's live. You've got to understand where I'm coming from. Now, a lot of other things are happening because of this war right now. And one of the biggest things is that the US essentially is sending B-52 bombers to Iran, which is an indication that they're going to be taking out the leader of Iran. That's actually good news, because the market can move on to a positive space. The faster the leader of Iran gets taken out, the faster the crypto market space and the stock market can restore back to normal and start on that climbing mode of alt season and the regulation of positive news and so on and so on. So here it is. The US essentially B-52 bombers arrive at Spain. This is also adding more geopolitical tension towards the market space. It's adding geopolitical tension towards the crypto market space and the stock market, with the US getting more and more involved. So this is the involvement that's happening right now, which is adding pressure towards the market space. The US B-52 bombers arrive at Spain Air Base right now. The US B-52H essentially bombers have arrived at Air Base in southern Spain, deployed by the US Air Force essentially, and NATO streak essentially preparations. With the B-52 essentially H bombers stationed in Spain, NATO strengthens its security and flexibility, testing military strategies. Reactions among military allies right now highlight increased operational readiness rather than any economic or digital asset shift. Because of this news also, the market space is a bit all over the place. The deployment involves essentially US Air Force B-52H bombers from North Dakota, Minton essentially Air Force Base, emphasizing NATO's commitment to operational essentially flexibility. The 23rd essentially expediting bomb essentially took charge with coordinating oversight of the US SAFE, essentially NATO's allied air commandos and commands announced the air essentially of reinforcing security through joint training and rapid deployments. This move is consistent with historical cooperations involving allied forces with the UK, Romania, and Spain. And while this situation is going on, while the heightened geopolitical awareness general essentially surfaces, the immediate crypto equity market effects are observed, but no direct shifts in digital assets like BTC and Ethereum have been impacted according to primary sources so far. But the closer those B-24, essentially, the closer essentially those B-52H bombers get close to Iran, it shows more involvement from the US, which puts pressure on the crypto market space. The only way is for them to take out the leader of Iran. They take out the leader of Iran, the crypto market space will be restored, and so will the stock market. It will be like two birds, one stone. The Iranian people will be freed, and the market space will be restored. Now, What's also essentially happening towards the market space is the China situation that's going on, where the US Treasury now has a stance against China's manufacturing dominance. We know for a fact that Trump is America first. He wants to bring as many corporations to the United States, which makes a lot of sense because China has a lot of power when it comes to manufacturing. And the US wants to be the king of crypto, king of manufacturing, and so on and so on. Well, they're putting a lot of pressure on China. That's also adding a lot of pressure on towards the market space. And so not only do we have the geopolitical tensions happening, but we also have essentially the market trade tensions that are happening at the exact same time. And we still have the tariff situation happening as well, which is adding more pressure on the market space. And we did have positive news, which we're going to go through on tonight's live as well, regarding essentially the Genius Act being passed through the Senate. It was amazing news, but the market couldn't react positively to it because of everything that's going on. So here it is. Scott Bessent, US Treasury Secretary, has declared that the US must reduce its dependency on China, which holds 30% of the global manufacturing share, in a recent press conference. Reducing reliance on China's manufacturing is crucial due to political risk. This shift could lead to the market volatility, especially in sectors essentially heavily tied to global supply chains. Scott Bessent identified China's 30% share in global manufacturing as too high, promoting calls to reduce their reliance. This aligns essentially with the previously expressed goals to address supply chains vulnerabilities exposed essentially the pandemic. In light of these concerns, Bessent stated, we do not want to decouple essentially, but we do need to de-risk, as we saw during COVID, whether it was with the semiconductors, medicines, and other products. We are in the process of essentially de-risking. In other words, if we do go through a COVID situation or a pandemic situation, the US doesn't have to rely on China for their medicine or anything else, which means the US could produce their own and they wouldn't go through what they went through last time. Both Bessent and President Trump emphasizes a shift towards economic rebalancing. Bessent aims for collaboration over confrontation, while Trump has accused China of breaking agreements, illustrating a complex economic relationship. Markets face potential volatility as global supply chains adjust. Dependency on Chinese manufacturing, especially for semiconductors, could usher in an investment shift to alternative sources, thereby impacting industries reliant on these supply chains. Financial implications include heightened market essentially scrutiny and potential funding reductions in the semiconductors and pharmaceutical sectors. This could provoke financial markets adjustments or volatility pending US-China policy developments. Analysts project adjustments in financial markets due to the US strict repositioning. Historical trends also suggest supply chain shocks might foster increased investments in alternative technologies and materials, potentially reshaping existing market sectors. So we have Israel, Iran. It's adding tension towards the crypto market space. The Russian-Ukraine situation is no longer adding any sort of essentially impact unless that gets out of control again. But Iran and Israel is adding essentially to the market pressure right now. The China situation, where the US is trying to decouple from China right now and become a bigger manufacturer themselves, that's adding also towards the market space on some sort of a pressure. Tariffs are still remaining in place. That adds a little bit of pressure. And obviously, we have Jerome Powell, the man who's in charge of the Fed, who could essentially, alleviate some of this pressure that's on the United States, on the world market. As the Bank of International Settlements or the International Monetary Fund put it once, if the American markets sneeze, the world market catches a cold. And Jerome Powell could reduce some of this pressure from the United States and the world market. And does he do that? No. Jerome Powell was supposed to be coming out and reassuring of some sort of rate cuts to be happening, but he decided we don't need rate cuts. And these are the bullet points of what the Fed speech was about. So, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell has delivered critical remarks following interest rate discussions. After the Feds left essentially interest rates unchanged, the Fed Chairman Jerome Powell made critical statements at a live press conference. And here are the essentially bullet points of what he discussed and said. He said the economy is in a solid shape. Has Jerome Powell looked outside his window? His first bullet point was the economy is in solid shape. The world is in shambles. And the last time, essentially, Jerome Powell came on the news, he said Trump is ruining the economy with his tariff plans. But now, according to his words, the economy is in solid shape. Inflation continued to run slightly above targets. The current policy stance places essentially us in a favorable position. But according to Jerome Powell on the news, Trump is again ruining the economy, but somehow, to Jerome Powell's speech, we're in a favorable position. He said unusual fluctuations in net exports make the calculation of the GDP more complicated. Inflation has declined, but is still above targets. It is not yet clear how market sentiments will affect spending. Concerns over trade policies have essentially dampened market sentiments. The unemployment rate remains within a narrow range and at low levels. Labor market conditions remain strong. Many indicators show the economy is near maximum employment. The overall personal consumer expenditure index is expected to increase by 2.3% and the core index by 2.6%. Inflation expectations have risen recently, and this is mainly due to concerns such as customs duties. Most long-term inflation indicators are in line with the targets. There is still uncertainty about changes in the trade policy and fiscal policies. The labor essentially market appears balanced, not a source of inflationary pressure. The impact of customs duties will depend on their level. Raising customs duties this year could weigh in on economic activity and push inflation even higher. Avoiding persistent inflation ultimately depends on keeping long-term inflation expectations stable. The impact of customs duties on inflation may essentially be a longer-lasting situation. There may be some tensions between dual mission objectives. The current conditions are favorable, and we can make the necessary adjustments once we have more information. The Fed will work hard to prevent one-time inflation from turning into a deep-rooted situation. There is uncertainty in the essentially office policymakers' forecast, and the uncertainty is extraordinarily high. Commodities prices have increased slightly recently, and this trend is expected to continue during these summer months. It will take some time for the customs duty measures to be reflected to consumers. It will also essentially, we have started to see some impacts of the tariffs and expect more impacts in the future. We cannot assume that inflation will rise and then fall as predicted. As we learn more, we believe that it will be appropriate to maintain current interest rates. When focusing on forecasts for the Fed's policy path, we should focus on the short-term, long-term forecasts are more difficult. The Federal Open Markets Committee, the FOMC, did not make any changes to interest rates at its June meeting, but attention was focused on the economic projections released rather than the interest rate discussions. The FOMC's economic forecast will call for 2 rate cuts in 2025, but that expectation has weakened. Under the new projections, 9 committee members, up from 8 at the previous meeting, think either none or just 1 rate cut would be appropriate this year. The Fed officials predict that inflation and employment will rise in the coming period, while economic growth will slow down. The decision to keep interest rates consistent was made unanimously. Another noteworthy statement is the committee's statement was the assessment that uncertainty regarding economic outlooks has decreased, but remains high. However, the view was found controversial by some circles, as essentially uncertainties in trade policies, the effects of the budget law on public finances, and the ongoing geopolitical tensions continue to keep this risk alive. While 2 interest rate cuts were previously anticipated for 2026, this number has been reduced to 1. The expectation for 2027 remains unchanged with a single interest rate cut, while the projected interest rate for that year has been increased from 3.1% to 3.4%. It is noteworthy that there is a wide, essentially, divergence of opinion on long-term interest rate projections. After Jerome Powell made his useless speech, Trump really wants to fire him now. And I agree. They should be firing Jerome Powell by the second. The same way they essentially threw out Gary Gensler is the same way they should be throwing out Jerome Powell. The man is utter useless. The man comes out on live news and says Trump is ruining the economy and he should stop with his tariffs. But his first bullet point was essentially the economy is in solid shape. Therefore, rate cuts are not needed. So why is Jerome Powell going on live news essentially saying Trump is ruining the economy, that we're going to be getting closer to some sort of a recession, if his first bullet point is going to be the economy is in solid shape? Honestly, someone needs to replace him ASAP. ASAP. Because he says one thing and does another. Now, before we go through the next news on tonight's live, which is regarding the Senate, let's go inside the comment section first, and then we'll go straight into the next news on tonight's live. So let's see where we're inside the comment section, and then we'll go straight to the next news, which is regarding the Senate, which is actually positive news regarding everything else that's happening inside the crypto space right now. So let's see where we were at inside the comment section. We were here. Cut the Fed as well as interest rates. Lol, facts. Like, retweet, and comment. Yes, facts. If you haven't done it already, like, comment, and retweet. Evening, Miles and CMF. Jason, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Callie, good evening, Miles. How are you? I'm doing great. Callie, good to see you. How you doing? Semper says, afternoon, Miles and CMF. Semper, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? As I said previously, this is live, which means if you do have any questions or statements to make, put it down inside the comment section. More than happy to help you out or even read out your statements. Good evening to my family. I am very happy to connect again. The time change got me. I run an effort to help inner city youth in my city in the summer. Scott, that's absolutely incredible. Let's go. Hello, my mentor Miles. Yay. Let's go, Scott. Good to see you, brother. How you doing? Hello, Miles. I'm so glad to be among the great people again. Let's go, Scott. Ray says, greetings from Texas. Hope all is well, CMF. Let's go. Let's go, Ray. How you doing? Kamal says, Miles, as you know, I'm from Iraq, and I fully understand where you come from because the same thing are happening to my people. Facts. I mean, the people. Yeah, I agree with what Kamal has just said in the comment section. 100% I agree with that. Trump is not trying to make the US a manufacturing hub. He hasn't introduced anything to be able to do so. Well, he has. Trump has got commitments and contracts and money from Middle Eastern countries and Japan. SoftBank made roughly about $100 billion investment inside the United States. Toyota has made investments inside the United States. They're building factories right now as we speak. Well, they're getting close to buying their land to build their factories, but Toyota has made investments. Kia has made investments, and a few other car manufacturers also. Rolls-Royce decided to move a manufacturing base into the United States because of tariffs also as well. One of the biggest Bitcoin mining companies today announced that they're moving their manufacturing to the United States because of tariffs. And this Bitcoin mining company produces pretty much, you could say, 98% of all of the Bitcoin mining essential corporations pretty much use this company, and their factories are based in China. They announced today they're moving it to the United States. So on the basis of Trump hasn't brought any sort of manufacturing and is not making the US a manufacturing hub, he is. He's aiming for it. It's more than anything anybody else has done inside the United States. Sleepy Joe did nothing for 4 years. He ate, slept, pretty much. He could barely walk or talk. Obama just stole billions of dollars into Iran in cash loads. Kamala Harris would have done absolutely nothing as well. So at least Trump is achieving something for the United States. Good evening, Miles and CMF. M, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Let's go, Manny. How you doing? And there was one Jerome Powell, and then there was one Jerome Powell. Facts, absolute facts. Now, the Senate. This was actually good news with everything else that's going on right now in the world with the Iran situation, the Israel situation, and so on. The Senate passing the Genius Act is actually incredibly positive news, and certain stocks reacted in a positive way. So here it is. The Senate passes Genius Act, paving way for $239 billion stablecoin expansion. This is incredibly, amazing news, but it's just being, overshadowed by what else is going on inside the world. The U.S. Senate has passed the Guiding and Establishing National Innovation for U.S. Stablecoins Genius Act on a 68-30 vote, marking the first time lawmakers have approved legislation focused on digital assets, a move welcomed by industry leaders. The bill gained essentially support with 18 Democrats joining most Republicans in favor. Only 2 Republicans opposed the measures. The Genius Act introduces a federal framework to regulate stablecoins, requiring dollar-backed reserves and clearly defined roles for state and federal oversight. The bill seeks to integrate stablecoins into the broader financial systems more securely, responding to long-lasting calls from the crypto industry and financial institutions for consistent rules. The CEO of Bitwise called the vote a turning point. The bill provides the clarity businesses have been waiting for and allows stablecoins, speed, and cost benefits to be safely integrated by banks, PSPs, and card networks, he said. He also explains that the stablecoin supply has grown from under $10 billion to $239 billion in just 5 years, showing the need for safeguards and regulatory consistency. Stand with Crypto, a US-based essentially crypto advocacy group, also welcomes the Senate's discussions in describing it as a key step towards securing America's place in involving some digital financial sectors. Stablecoins play a critical role in America's digital economy, bridging crypto and fiat currency, said Mason, the community director with Stand with Crypto. He also said, we need legislations that ensure that they are safe, fully backed and transparent while fostering competition and innovation in the marketplace. This bill moves us closer to the reality. The organization says we will score lawmakers based on their votes on the Genius Act, using the results in future crypto policy scorecards to track political alignments on key industry essentially issues. Beyond regulating stablecoins, the Genius Act is being seen as a part of a broader attempt to re-establish the US as a leader in blockchain development. The lack of clear regulations has pushed some developers and companies abroad. According to Stand with Crypto, the US share of global blockchain developers has dropped by roughly 14% since 2018, falling to 26% by 2023. But obviously, with Trump in power, things have changed. Industry voices also argue that the regulatory uncertainty is hindering and deteriorating institutional interest inside the crypto sector. With stablecoins increasingly used in both retail and business payments, the Genius Act is positioned to help bridge those gaps by laying the groundwork. Lit, the vice president of the global policy and regulations at blockchain analytics firm, called the Senate vote a pivotal step in reshaping the country's digital asset future. She added, it's clear that the robust consumer protections and market integrity safeguards were essentially central to driving this approval, and the Genius Act benefited from strong, essentially non-bipartisan support. The House is expected to take up the legislation in the coming weeks, while some industry advocates have argued rapid passage. Others, including the Conference of State Bank Supervisors, are essentially also passing for key changes to address such potential risks to financial stability, which we're going to talk about a little bit essentially more on. That is incredible news regarding the Senate passing the Genius Act, but again, it's just being overshadowed by what else is happening inside the world regarding the situation in the Middle East. That is having impacts on the crypto market and the stock market as we speak. But that's incredible news. And what I am trying to say is that yes, things are happening over there, but please don't take your eyes off the crypto market space or essentially the market space in general, because a lot of positive things are happening inside the market space, but the news is, over there, it is just overshadowing what's happening over here. Now, Bitwise is what we're going to talk about next. Before we talk about Bitwise, let's go inside the comment section first, and then we'll go straight into the next news. As I previously, this is live, which means if you have any questions or statements to make, put it down in the comment section. More than happy to help you out. Now, let's go inside the comment section first. Let's see what's going on there, and then we'll go straight into the next news on tonight's live, which is regarding Bitwise. JP has no, we were at not JP, sorry, we were at Woodhouse's section. Woodhouse said, I'm behind on the live. Woodhouse, you definitely are, yes. Carol, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Funky Brother says, Miles, when did you become Christian? I see a cross around your neck. I thought you did not believe in religion law. I'm not a Christian, but I do believe in Jesus, and that's the only reason I'm wearing a cross. So I'm not technically a full-on Christian in any sort of a way. I only believe in God, but I also do believe in Jesus, and that's the reason why I'm wearing a cross. Just want to clarify that. Sorry, CMF, I just speak my mind. Doesn't mean to offend anyone. Yeah, I know. Don't worry about it, Funky Brother. But no, I just believe in Jesus and I believe in God, and that's the reason why I'm wearing a cross. Not wearing it because I'm a Christian. I'm just wearing it because, as everybody knows, I have no religion. I just believe in God. But I also believe in Jesus, and that's the reason why I'm wearing a cross. Morning, Miles and CMF. Shelly, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? As I said in the past, I respect everybody's religion, no matter what you are. I've always just been a believer of God. No religion, just a believer of God. And I also believe in Jesus. Now, Bitwise. Bitwise says fiat system is losing trust among investors. It's Bitcoin time or crypto time. So Bitwise essentially has come out forward and said that fiat is pretty much on the verge of a collapse and everybody should be running towards cryptocurrencies. So here it is. As global financial conditions continue to evolve and more investors are rethinking long-standing essentially assumptions about money itself. Bitwise's chief investment officer, Matt Hugan, believes the world is starting to question the foundations of a fiat currency, an experiment that defined the modern economics since the early 1970s. In a recent memo, Matt Hugin compares fiat money to water, that most people never stop to consider what it really is. Matt Hugin also argues that the fiat currency, which lacks a tangible backing like gold or silver, is losing its status as a default monetary framework. Since the United States abandoned the gold standard back in 1971, the global monetary supply has been essentially dictated almost entirely by the central bank. The shift, essentially once viewed as progress, is now being scrutinized more than ever. Recent data highlights a sharp increase in gold purchases by central banks, particularly since the 2008 financial crisis. That trend accelerated following geopolitical tensions, especially after 2022 Russian invasions of Ukraine. These institutions are seeking more stable seizures and resistance assist to protect reserves from both inflation and political risk. Gold recently surpassed the euros to become the second largest reserve asset globally. Meanwhile, retail investors are turning to Bitcoin as their hedge of choice and cryptocurrencies in general as an alternative in small portions, but wallet activity actually increasing. With properties essentially similar to gold, scarcity, decentralization, and humanity to political manipulation, crypto offers essentially a modern alternative that aligns with the digital age. Bitcoin's ETFs have also attracted over $45 billion in inflows since 2024, outpacing gold ETFs by a significant margin. Matt Hugin also believes that more people are waking up to the risk associated with limitless money printing and unchecked monetary expansions. Traditional investment strategies relying heavily on fiat-based assets like stocks and bonds may no longer offer essentially protection as they once did. Both individuals and institutions are seeking alternatives that preserve value in the world of growing debt and financial uncertainty. Bitcoin is still small relative to gold, and global equities may not yet attract central bank adoption, but its momentum is essentially undeniable. As faith in fiat weakens, the demand for scarce, independent financial assets only expected to grow. According to Bitwise, because the market is going through turbulence, because the geopolitical tensions that are happening, and because fiat is pretty much not going away, but is about to be going digital, Bitwise is saying it's the perfect time for you to be inside the crypto space. None of this is financial advice in any sort of way, but Bitwise is just stating essentially in their own words that it's now or never to join the crypto space, because regulations are being passed as we speak. Even though there are massive geopolitical tensions happening around the world, regulations are being passed on the sidelines, and that it's pretty much now or never to get involved inside the crypto space. The world is going digital. Moving on from what Bitwise had to say to what's happening in China. Chinese central banks head pledges to expand international CBDC use report. So many people think that CBDCs are something of the past, but in reality, CBDCs are something that's still ongoing. 98% of essentially 98% of centralized banks are still in CBDCs. They're either in essentially pilot testing mode, research mode, or whatever stage they're standing at right now. But 98% of centralized banks are still in CBDCs. In China's new report that's come out, well, they're heavily into CBDCs. China's central bank chief Pan essentially has pledged to expand the footprint of the digital yuan, their Chinese CBDC, reaffirming the country's vision for its central bank digital currency CBDC, according to a retainers report. China is creating an international operations center in Shanghai for digital yuan, also known as essentially ECNY. Pan essentially made the remarks at the Lejuza Forum, a professional forum for high-profile local and international finance regulators and executives. The Chinese envision a multipolar currency system where multiple currencies support the global economy, Pan said. This vision contrasts with the current system where a few currencies like the US dollar and the euros play larger roles in the global financial systems. The US dollars particularly have become less appealing to investors in 2025, partially due to the unscripted rollouts of tariffs by US President Donald Trump over the past months. Pan also weighed in on the digital essentially technologies, claiming that traditional cross-border payment systems are vulnerable to geopolitical risk. Traditional cross-border payment infrastructures can be easily politicized and weaponized and used as a tool for unliterate sanctions, damaging global economies and financial order. What China is referring to is something I said a while ago. Essentially, 2 years ago, I said the reason why SWIFT is a failing payment system is not why It's not because SWIFT is slow and expensive. SWIFT has been expensive and slow for the longest time, and nobody cared. The reason why SWIFT needs to be replaced and the reason why SWIFT should no longer exist and countries are losing hope in SWIFT is because SWIFT is not a messaging tool or a payment tool, even though it is on paper. What SWIFT is a political tool. SWIFT has always been a political tool where it can be used to essentially sanction countries, where the US could say Russia is no longer allowed to use SWIFT, which collapses Russia's payment systems, you could say pretty much, connecting them to the rest of the world. The biggest downfall of SWIFT is not because it's slow, it's not because it's expensive, it's because it's a political tool. And it doesn't matter who SWIFT partners up with. No country wants to touch SWIFT. As the days go by, as the years go by, less countries would want to be using SWIFT. So this is why I said when SWIFT partnered with Chainlink or when they partnered with any other crypto project out there, it's trash. It's going to remain trash. And it has a bad image in essentially world leaders' eyes, where they're seeing SWIFT as a political tool, not a messaging tool or a payment tool. So that's what essentially China is referring to when they made these statements today, when they said traditional cross-border payments infrastructures can be easily politicized and weaponized and used as a tool for illiterate sanctions, damaging global economies and financial order. That is what's wrong with SWIFT. It's not a messaging service. It's not a payment tool, even though it says that on paper. It's a political tool, and that's its downfall. And this is why crypto is a better alternative. This is why an XRP ledger is a better alternative. Stablecoins, often pegged to the US dollar, have become well known for their ability to facilitate cross-border transactions. These digital assets are considered one of crypto's first breakthroughs, mainstream use cases, and present a contrast to CBDCs, which are essentially controlled by the centralized entities such as central banks. Despite the rising essential adoption of stablecoins, how many countries continue to pursue CBDCs? Hong Kong, a special administration region of China, is advancing a stablecoin pilot program. In Europe, lawmakers across the member states continue to push for digital euros, a CBDC, while the United Arab Emirates expects to roll out a digital dirhams, digital CBDC dirhams, by the end of 2025. Israel has also released a primary design for a digital shekel, a digital CBDC. According to essentially a report that came out back in February 11th, the official monetary and financial institutions form CBDC interest is cooling among central banks, so 31% delaying implementation plans for now, is what they stated back then. Among the central banks, common concerns include regulations and economic conditions, which regulations are changing now. China began exploring the creation of CBDCs back in 2014 and has plans to expand the digital yuan as a payment tool both internationally and domestically. The country has hoped to combat the US dollar's role as the world's reserve currency. The two countries have been mirrored in a trade war since Trump rolled out the tariff plan, or Liberation Day as he called it. So China essentially coming out and stating that they're ready to expand on their CBDC is an indication of where the Asian countries are standing when it comes to digital currencies. China is going to be expanding its CBDC. That's a big one, to be fairly honest, that they're going to be expanding their CBDC. Very big news that they're going to be expanding. They haven't stated which nations they're going to be expanding it to, but obviously they're starting with Hong Kong because that's pretty much a part of China. They're most likely going to be expanding it into Russia. They'll probably try to expand it into some other Asian countries and try to let it spread like wildfire. On the other side of the spectrum, the US should be spreading its own essentially stablecoins, which is essentially RLUSD from Ripple side or USDC from Circle side, or both of these together should essentially be coming out, which I do believe both of these stablecoins will get a green light. I'm not sure on USDT ever getting a green light from the United States unless they try to pay themselves way through it. The same way Tron, Justin Sun, paid his way through getting essentially his company, not being investigated by the CFTC or the SEC because he paid his way through, and then getting his company listed on the NASDAQ, again, he paid his way through. I think Tether's only option is to pay his way through to get some sort of essentially approval. But I don't think that's a great idea in any sort of a way because that's a stable coin that could backfire really bad. Even if they pay their ways through, that could backfire really bad. I don't think USDT should be approved in any sort of a way. USDC and RLUSD should be the only tokens, the only stablecoins approved by the United States under the Genius Act, in my point of view. Now, Moving on from that to BlackRock. Before we talk about BlackRock on tonight's live, let's go inside the comment section first, and then we'll go straight into the next news. So let's see what's going on inside the comment section. As I said previously, this is live, which means if you do have any questions or statements to make, put it outside the comment section. I read everybody's comments one by one. I don't miss out on anyone. And then we'll go straight into the next news, which is related to BlackRock. Let's see where we were at inside the comment section. We are at here. Morning, Miles and CMF. Shelly, good to see you as well. Morning, how you doing, Shelly? How you been? Susie, good evening, Miles and CMF. Good to see you as well, Susie. How you doing? How you been? Woodhouse says, I bloody know it's now or never. Which company said that? Woodhouse also said, I got an ad. Anyone else? Yeah, ads sometimes do pop up. Canary Islands says, hi, bro. I have a question. What do you think about BlockDAG? Canary Islands, you don't need to type the same question 10 times. I read everybody's comments one by one. What do I think about BlockDAG? Is a massive red flag. In my point of view, the crypto project that's been going around by the name of essentially BlockDAG, it's a massive red flag. It's a massive scam, and I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. To be very honest. Woodhouse also said, I don't know if this is essentially a daft question, but who is behind the digital yuan? Is it Ripple or is it privately developed? China won't reveal that information in sort of a way. That's the issue. Now, BlackRock, Crypto.com is what's happening. Derbit and Crypto.com essentially accept BlackRock's tokenized treasury as collateral. Crypto derivatives exchange, Derbit, and spot trading platform Crypto.com have begun accepting BlackRock's tokenized US Treasury as essentially a fund for collateral, giving institutionals and experienced traders access to low volatility yield generating asset for margin accounts. This move essentially allows traders to use BlackRock's Build Fund, their tokenization fund, a digital version of the US Treasury, to secure a leveraged position, reducing capital requirements while offering a stable interest-bearing alternative to traditional stablecoins. The development essentially follows Coinbase's recently announced $2.9 billion acquisition of Derbit, set in motion in May 2025. That deal, if completed, could deepen Coinbase's reach into the crypto derivatives space while trying in traditional financial instruments like tokenized treasuries. So BlackRock didn't go to Coinbase for this expansion on tokenization of assets and collateral. They went to Crypto.com, which is an interesting one, that BlackRock went to Crypto.com, not to Coinbase, because even though they're with Coinbase on other matters. But the other company that essentially is with Crypto.com, Derbit, Coinbase is trying to buy them out. The same way, essentially, the news that was spreading regarding Ripple trying to buy out Circle to deepen their essentially footprint, all the other acquisitions Ripple has made to deepen their footprint, Coinbase wants us to do the same thing. They want to buy out the company that's just partnered with essentially BlackRock. BlackRock's Build Fund, which launched earlier this year, already holds about $2.9 billion, representing nearly 40% of the tokenized US Treasury market. According to data essentially from RWA.xyz, the broader tokenized government, essentially bond market, has reached $7.3 billion, most of it sitting on the Ethereum blockchain. While originally seen as a niche financial product, tokenized treasuries are gradually gaining ground and a credible, essentially, alternative to stablecoins, especially for institutions looking to earn yield while staying in digital native ecosystems. Their growing use also highlights how crypto markets are pulling closer to infrastructure of traditional financials. BlackRock had earlier announced plans to roll out Build as accepted collateral asset across several centralized exchanges and derivatives platforms, including Binance and OKX Exchange. BlackRock is getting more involved inside the crypto space. They're trying to connect their platform to essentially Binance and OKX Exchange, and Crypto.com is what BlackRock's trying to do. The fund is already being essentially put to work in DeFi. In January, the Frax Finance Committee voted to build its collateral mix of essentially FRX-USD is partially backed stablecoin, and supporters of the integration say tokenized treasuries offer deeper liquidity, broader transfer options, and reduced counterparty risk, thanks largely to the backing of the heavyweights like BlackRock, which manages around $11.5 trillion in global assets. Still, the concentration of tokenized treasuries remains high. Just 6 firms, BlackRock, Franklin Templeton, Ondo Finance, Superstate, Centrifuge, and Circle, control over 88% of the market, raising essentially a familiar question about centralization risk of what is often billed as decentralized financial systems. They're essentially saying that even though people say the crypto space is decentralized, it's decentralized. Technically, the US market space, when it comes to cryptocurrencies, according to data, it's mostly controlled by 6 companies: BlackRock, Franklin Templeton, Ondo Finance, Superstate, Centerfetch, and Circle, pretty much. And they control over 88% of the market space. This is what essentially the founder of Cardano was referring to regarding the monopoly that's going on inside the crypto space of between BlackRock and the Coinbase essentially crew. Ethereum also continues to dominate the sector, hosting over $5.7 billion of tokenized government securities issued to date. I said this a while ago as well. We don't live in a decentralized world. We will, unfortunately, not in my lifetime, live in a decentralized world. And what I mean by that is cryptocurrencies will exist. CBDCs will exist. ETFs will exist. Tokenization will exist. And the world will go digital in my lifetime, in your lifetime. It's all happening. But what I'm trying to say is the ideology of people saying decentralization is what's going to be happening. We live in a world where elements of centralization are always going to exist. No matter what you do, we live in a world where elements of centralization will always exist. Where something or someone or some company will always have the bigger stake. Now, moving on from that, moving on from BlackRock to Europe, the European Central Bank. Christian Lagarde, the president of the European Central Bank, in the time when the US may seem weak in terms of their US dollars, according to the rest of the world, the EU has hopes and dreams of becoming the #1 currency. Again, Christian Lagarde's Eurovision is coming out, Europe's bold bid to lead the way, and what it means for crypto. Christian Lagarde, the president of the European Central Bank, has unveiled a sweeping vision to elevate the euro's global role. Her call for a stronger economic foundations, tighter trader links, and deep institutional reform signals Europe's bold ambition to lead the global finance and possibly shape the future of crypto across the region. Christian Lagarde believes the euros can gain ground on the world's changes and the US dollar's dominance is questioned. This moment offers a real chance for Europe to raise a euro's profile internationally. She mentioned that open markets and shared rules are weakening, which puts the dollar's long-held position under question. This year, many investors have pulled back from the dollar, unsettled by President Trump's unpredictable trade policies. As confidence in the US currency wavers, some are turning to Europe. Interest in Europe has grown, especially with increased public spending, notably in Germany. This spending signals a willingness within Europe to boost growth, attracting investors' attention. Still, officials warn against a sudden move away from the dollar, fearing it could unsettle the global financial system. A careful, balanced transition is key to keeping things stable worldwide. So we all had, essentially this news, a while ago, quite a bit of a while ago, where the BRICS Foundation was going to come in and take over the dollars, but the plan completely fell through because Trump didn't let it happen. And also, I said it was never going to happen in the first place anyways. Nothing will try to replace the dollar as long as America essentially is still standing. The dollar will still remain #1 because America is still going to be still standing strong. But the US is now taking that opportunity. So when BRICS tried to take over the dollars and it failed, Europe wants to do the exact same thing BRICS did and try to overtake the US dollars. Despite the interest in the latest reports, currently the euro is the world's second most used currency, making up around 20% of the global foreign exchange reserves. By comparison, the US dollar holds approximately 58%. And despite the interest, the latest reports from the European Central Bank shows that the euros use internationally stayed mostly fiat in 2024 and 2025. This shows how hard it is to compete with the dollars on the world stage. The euro's strength depends on a lot of Europe's roles in trade, and the EU is the world's largest trading group. It is the biggest partner of the 72 countries, representing nearly 40% of the global economy. Christian Lagarde emphasized that Europe should leverage its position by pursuing new trade agreements to expand the euro's reach. She added that investor confidence depends heavily on trust in the political and economic stability of the currency issuer. Hence, the region must build on this. The European Central Bank president stressed the need for a stronger economic foundation if Europe essentially is to gain more global finance. While Europe's essentially debt burden is lighter than America's 89% of their GDP compared to America's 124% in the US, she noted that growth across the EU remains slow and uneven. Another concern is the limited supply of the top quality, safe asset for investors, which puts the euros at a disadvantage. To stay competitive and maintain its influence, she said Europe essentially needs to compete in a single market and create a unified capital market space. Cutting the red tape and encouraging cross-border investments will help. She added that Europe also should back important industries like green tech and defense with coordinated policies. Shared fundings for things like defense could also create more safe assets. For the euros to gain its status, Europe must take decisive steps by completing the single market, reducing regulatory essentially burdens, and building a robust capital markets union. Essentially industries such as green technologies and defense should be supported through coordinated EU-wide policies. Joint financing of public goods like defense could create more safe assets, said Christian Lagarde, the president of the European Central Bank. Her vision is pretty much a stronger euro-backed, solid essentially trade ties can boost investor confidence, which may expand to crypto markets. Completing essentially a single market and unifying capital markets could make it easier for crypto firms to expand across Europe. Improved legal and institutional stability would attract more investors to regulated crypto products. They're saying essentially Europe trying to take the leads is actually going to be playing a positive role for cryptocurrencies, because Europe has the MiCA regulations and other crypto regulations in place and so on, while the US still has, just come to a stage to pass the Genius Act, and some other acts are on the way. And essentially a multitude of US states are going through some sort of a Reserve Act right now as well. But Europe has, they're par on par with Dubai when it comes to regulations, even though Dubai will be better because of tax reasons. But BRICS failed to topple the US dollars. Europe thinks their euro could be the one to take over the US dollars, but in a digital form, not in a fiat form, eventually. Now, what we're going to be talking about next, moving away from essentially the ideology that Christian Lagarde, the president of the Central Bank of Europe, has, to Coinbase and Circle. Before we talk about that, let's go to the comment section first. As I previously, this is live, which means if you do have any questions or any comments to make, put it down in the comment section. More than happy to help you out or answer the questions you may have. So let's go to the comment section first, and we go straight into the next news regarding Coinbase and Circle. Let's see where we're at. Thompson, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? Hello again, everyone. I certainly hope that I am not too late when joining this live stream. You're still good on time. Shelly says, CMF, remember, please like and repost the live on X as well as comment. Thank you so much, Shelly, for mentioning that. Yes, facts. CMF members, like, comment, share, essentially, and retweet if you haven't done already, or just like and retweet, which I think is concerning for the future. Robin says, when will altcoin season happen now when this war is happening, in your opinion? Also, how long do you think the parabolic rise during altcoin season will last? Great question. The first part of your question of when will alt season essentially happen now that this war is happening, in your opinion? In my point of view, this war essentially is coming to an end quite rapidly. Israel is not letting the Iranian government breathe, and they shouldn't, because if the Iranian government catches their breath, they might try to do something else. So good on Israel for not letting the Iranian government be able to breathe and just keep on putting pressure on the Iranian government. So this war is rapidly coming to an end, and a regime change is going to be happening in Iran, by the looks of it, very quickly. So this war is coming to an end very quickly, which means we're still not, far off from our dates of essentially Q3 to Q4 for the market to be having that uprise. So this war is rapidly coming to an end. It's pretty much the fastest war I've ever seen. It's the fastest I've seen any country in the modern age take another country pretty much under control fully. The second part of your question, also, how long do you think the parabolic rise during essentially the alt season will last? Once we have rules and regulations, certain crypto projects will go up in price depending on how much their utility is being used. So projects like XRP, XLM, XDC, HBAR, AVAX, and even Sol will do tremendously well. Some will do better than others, guaranteed in my point of view. XRP will do better than the rest because it's heavily involved inside the financial sector as a medium of payments, or a gas token, something we like to call it. But it will be heavily used. Utility, essentially, regulation equals utility, which means a parabolic run will last very long for different crypto projects. It will last a very short time for certain crypto projects. And crypto projects that bring nothing to the table, which means no utility, just bluff, which means they've just been bluffing all this time about their partnerships or contracts, will do absolutely nothing. They'll do something because the whole market will be essentially excited and going up in price. But at one point, that fuel will run out on their rocket and they'll come back down. And crypto projects that have actual utility like XRP, XLM, XDC, HBAR, AVAX, and so on will continue going higher the stages where essentially they need to be. For XRP, it's going to be, the sky's the limit. XLM will do tremendously well for itself as well alongside XRP. XDC will do very well for itself inside the financial sector as well, and so on and so on. So in terms of the parabolic run, how long is it going to last? It depends on each token itself. Depends on how much utility to bring to the table. So for XRP, it's going to last a very long time on that fuel. Now, Stefan says, I'm Jewish and I stand close to Jesus, so I go to heaven because I'm chosen. Stefan, good on you. Thompson says, it seems that the market is totally in red. However, that is because of the rumors of both Iran and Israel conflicts. Yes, they're not rumors, they're actually happening. The Iran-Israel situation is not a rumor, it's actually happened. The war is ongoing, and Iran has completely lost this war. The Iranian government completely lost this war. But I said that was going to happen anyways. And I'm Iranian myself. I'm Persian myself. I'm Iranian myself. And I said, before this war ever started, I said a regime change is going to happen before this war ever started. I said a regime change is going to happen. I said the Shah is going to come back, and that Iran will lose this war against the US. It will lose this war against Israel. And people said to me, essentially, that, no, how can you say that? The US lost against Afghanistan, the US lost against Iraq, and so on and so on. And I said, if you really thought to yourself, the US lost against Afghanistan, then you don't know what you're talking about. Because the US won that war in a way, because they didn't go to Afghanistan for essentially a war scenario. They went to Afghanistan because Afghanistan is between two countries, Pakistan and Iran. They went to Afghanistan for intelligence. That's the only reason they were in Afghanistan. They were there for intelligence purposes. If they were going there for an actual war, they could have flattened Afghanistan in under 24 hours. So this is what, and I also said, essentially, with Israel, going after each country Iran has a base in one by one, I said the last stop is going to be Iran. This is the fastest, honestly, I've seen any country take over another country in the modern age. The fastest. I said Iran will lose this war before it started. I said the regime change is coming before this war started. And this war is ending very quickly, which is a great thing. The Iranian people will be freed from this horrendous, corrupt Iranian government. All the Iranian people will be free. That's one bird. The other bird is that the market can move on quick enough, the crypto market and the stock market, and react to the positive news. Two birds, one stone. This is why I say thank you, Israel. There's many reasons why I say thank you, Israel, for what they're doing by helping the Iranian people. And again, some people maybe got offended yesterday when I said thank you, Israel, for helping the Iranian people. But as I said, you don't know what the Iranian government has done to its own people, to its own, essentially, to women, to men, to children. You have zero idea. And the people that are also holding placards stating essentially they stand with Iran, or essentially Iran has the right to defend itself, and so on. Those people have either zero clue what they're talking about, or they're Iranians that are in favor of the Iranian government because they get paychecks from the Iranian government. And this is why I say there's two types of people supporting the Iranian government. There's either the morons that are supporting the Iranian government and they're doing it for free because they're morons. And then there's the other side, essentially, which are brainwashed and getting paychecks. But the brainwash can also apply to the morons. But honestly, you have zero idea what the Iranian government has done to its own people. This is why I say Benjamin Netanyahu looks like Mother Teresa compared to what the leader of Iran has done to its own people, to its own, essentially women, men, and children. There are things I mean, if you only knew. So this is why I say thank you to Israel. Honestly, they're doing God's work right now, taking out the Iranian government. They're doing God's work. Now, it seems that the market is taught that. Either way, I have been accumulating following the Shiba, Ondo, Lunacy, Toro, and Pengu. Hopefully that would allow me to accumulate more of the important isotokens. Let's go, Thompson. It's incredible. Peg says, hi, Miles, the CMF. Peg, good to see you. How you doing? How you been? That's the plan. Let's go, Thompson. Shelly says, I saw lots of girls in schools taking off their headwear and standing up against the regime. Facts. Shelly says, I hope the women of Iran get their freedom. Facts. One person in Iran, a lot of people protested multiple times in Iran for a regime change. And out of the billion stories of how the Iranian government has treated its own people, I'll let you know one of these stories, but I'll say it in code. So in one of the protests, one person decided to protest. And, essentially, there was a lot of protests happening in Iran. This was a while ago. There was a lot of protests happening in Iran. And it was during the women's freedom protest in Iran, where women no longer wanted to be restricted under the Islamic law of Iran. And one of these women was essentially arrested. And a lot of them were arrested. But one in particular was arrested for, going up against the dictatorship of Iran and so on and so on. What the Iranian government did to this person when they arrested them is they put this person in 3 parts and buried each part on different sections of Iran. One part was buried on the left, essentially the west. One part was buried in the south. One part was buried essentially in the east of Iran. And then they called this family's this family, and they said, if you want to go and see and pick up your child's whatever it's left, here are the locations. This is what the Iranian government does to people that stand up against them. This is when I say that essentially Benjamin Netanyahu looks like Mother Teresa compared to the leader of Iran. This is what I mean when I say this man looks like Mother Teresa, the leader of Israel. Even though, nobody's a good person, nobody's a perfect person in this world, but the leader of Israel looks like Mother Teresa compared to the leader of Iran, where people who protested against them were put into 3 parts and buried on different sections of Iran. And then they will call up the family members and say, if you want to go and pick up whatever's left from your child, these are the locations. This is what the Iranian government does. And that's just one of the incidences, of the billion incidences that happen in Iran. So this is why I say, thank you, Israel. This is honestly why I say, thank you, Israel, for helping out the Iranian people, because nobody else did. And then when I say these things, people like this idiot inside the comment section. People inside the comment section like this. Do you see this person inside the comment section? Nasa Beg. He says, you're a Western wannabe. They will never accept you, traitor. They're calling me, it's people like this. They're calling me a traitor. They're calling me a wannabe Western because I'm telling the truth. And the truth threatens these types of people. It's the first person inside the comment section. The first person inside the comment section. He says, you're a Western wannabe. They will never accept you, traitor. For me telling the truth about Iran. And some people might say, well, how do you know this? How is this story even true? Well, I have family members who were commanders in the Shah's army, when the Shah of Iran was in power. I have family members who used to be commanders in the Shah's army, and they still have links in Iran, and they still live in Iran, and they feed me information. So imagine your child protesting for their rights to wear what they want, just to wear what they want. And they get put into 3 pots and buried in different locations. And then your father and mother get a call. If you want to pick up whatever's left from your child, go to these locations. That's just one of the incidences of the other billion incidences. Now, moving on from that, and I won't be sharing any more of these stories because it's just too deepening to say. Now, Coinbase. Coinbase taps Circle USDC for its new stablecoin payment system. Coinbase and Circle are coming together for a new payment system that Coinbase is trying to launch. So here it is. The next era of commerce may be settled in stablecoins. Coinbase payments now live on Shopify. Coinbase is now launching a payment system just like Apple Pay. You could pretty much say it's going to be listed on different essential locations. Essentially, it's going to be listed on platforms like Shopify. It's going to be listed on platforms that you may use for grocery shopping and so on. Coinbase payments is coming out like essentially Binance Pay or Apple Pay and so on. So here it is, the next era of payments to be settled in stablecoins. Coinbase payments now live on Shopify delivers a plug-and-play stack that enables platforms to offer global instant USDC transactions with minimal friction. In an announcement on June 18th, Coinbase essentially unveiled its new end-to-end stablecoin payment infrastructure built to bridge the gap between traditional commerce and on-chain finance. The solution, powered by Coinbase's Layer 2 network base, allows its merchants to accept Circle stablecoin USDC without dealing with blockchain complexities. Shopify, the first major essentially partner, has already integrated the system, enabling essentially its vast merchant base to receive near instant low-cost USDC payments from its customers worldwide. According to an announcement, Circle's new stablecoin payment infrastructure features a consumer essentially facing checkout layer, a merchant-focused API suite, and an on-chain settlement protocol. The first layer of stablecoin checkout is a wallet-native interface that supports USDC payments across hundreds of crypto wallets, including essentially MetaMask, Phantom, and Coinbase wallets. It's optimized for UX, offering a glassless flow that eliminates the manual fee calculations and typical in crypto payments. Behind the scenes, the commerce engine translates merchant operations such as refunds and subscriptions into blockchain-compatible actions using standardized APIs. This removes the need for platforms to manage private keys or build custom logic. Settlements essentially is handled by the Commerce Payments Protocol, an open-source smart contract system that mimics traditional commerce features like escrow and delayed capture. Leveraging basis essentially second finalities, it makes stablecoin settlements feel native to modern commerce. The Shopify's integration showcases the system's essentially plug-and-play design. When the customer pays with USDC, the transaction routes through Coinbase's wallet-native interference, while Shopify verifies the payments via API funds are held in smart contract escrows until order fulfillment, providing merchants will essentially with immediate confirmation without banking delays. So Coinbase is releasing, we could say, something close to Binance Pay, Apple Pay, Google Pay, and so on. It's great to see essentially cryptocurrencies being more widely used on online basis and even later on in groceries and shoppings and so on and so on. Now, moving on from Coinbase and Circle with their new payment system to the US. The US Fed. So, the US Fed files to seize $225 million in the largest crypto bust. Federal agents inside the United States have filed to seize over $225 million in cryptocurrencies. This is the largest crypto amount to be seized in the history of the US Secret Service. The civil forfeit complaint was filed by the US District Court for District Court of Columbia. The case targets cryptos tied to scams that tricked victims into fake investment schemes. According to a settlement from the U.S. Attorney Office, this was after a joint investigation by the U.S. Secret Service, FBI, and U.S. Attorney Office. The report said that they used blockchain analysis to track down the stolen funds, and the fund was hidden across hundreds of thousands of transactions, which were done essentially on a purpose to confuse the authorities and also make it untraceable. However, the agents were able to follow the trails and freeze the wallets linked to the fraud, and these wallets were part of a global scam network that helped criminals wash and move stable money. Officials say the funds were tied to cryptocurrency confidence scams, where victims were pursued to invest in some deals that had to do with cryptocurrencies. Millions of people in the US lost their money and over 400 others worldwide. These scams prey on trust, often resulting in extreme financial hardship for the victims and Secret Service Special Agent Sean. Meanwhile, the US Attorney, Jenny, essentially said her team is leading the charge to stop crypto scams happening. In short, she wrote on X, under my leadership, with the support of President Trump and Attorney General Bondi, the U.S. Attorney's Office for District of Columbia is taking a leading role in the fight against crypto confidence scams, partnering with law enforcement throughout the country to seize and forfeit stolen funds and rip them from the hands of foreign criminals, all with the eye towards making victims whole. The Justice Department stated the goal now is to go after the networks behind these scams and return the stolen assets to the victims. So one of the biggest seizures is happening inside the United States, you could pretty much say to date. $225 million is about to be seized in crypto by the Secret Service, by essentially the FBI, and by the Attorney's Office as well. So this is another reason why we need regulations inside the crypto space. And this should push senators who are against crypto to become pro-crypto, because regulations will stop scams inside the crypto space. Not all types of scams, but the majority will come to an end. Now, moving on, essentially from one of the biggest seizures is happening in crypto, essentially inside the United States, to another regulation that's about to be passed inside the United States. Now, we all know about the Genius Act, which is essentially the Stablecoin Act, which is quite a big deal. Stablecoins being able to operate domestically, internationally, and so on between institutions, banks, and the retail section. But another regulation that's on the way to be passed is technically the Clarity Act. Now, I've talked about the Clarity Act before, which is pretty much a package deal for the crypto space. So here is a little update. The US Senate prepares its Clarity Act for crypto regulations. The US Senate Banking Committee is drafting its version of the Clarity Act, focusing on digital asset regulations. The committee, led by Senator Cynthia Lummis, aims for a clearer regulatory framework. The legislative efforts by the Senate Banking Committee seeks to provide clearer regulations for the cryptocurrency markets, carrying potential implications for digital assets. The Senate Banking Committee has announced its intentions to draft the Clarity Act, a bill aiming to establish a structured regulatory environment for digital assets. Senator Cynthia Lummis chairs essentially the subcommittee set to address the cryptocurrency market regulatory frameworks, and Senator Tim Scott, noting optimism, anticipates a full committee hearing soon. Both senators have a history in digital asset legislative efforts, enhancing the bill's credibility and focus on regulatory structures. The introduction of the Clarity Act is significant for digital assets with implications for cryptocurrencies. These assets stand to benefit from more structured regulations. The bill does not directly link to new government funding, but focuses on regulatory clarity, which historically helps enhance trading volumes and institutional engagement, because the Clarity Act stops the whole gray area situation where banks don't know, is that a gray area? Can we enter in that area? Or institutions don't know, is it a gray area? Can we enter in that area when it comes to the crypto space? The Clarity Act removes pretty much the gray area, which gives everybody an idea of what to do and what you can't do inside the crypto space as an institution or a bank. While direct financial impacts remain unseen, possible regulatory outcomes include a clearer compliance obligation for Layer 1 and Layer 2 protocols. Historical legislation such as the Genius Act stablecoin regulation, which we talked about, indicates potential increase in oversight and regulatory certainty. This can drive institutional essentially interest and trading activity in major cryptocurrencies, such as essentially Ethereum, Bitcoin, XRP, and so on. These baptism co-sponsors have been some of the fiercest crypto leaders in Congress, and their bill essentially takes an important step towards establishing common sense regulatory framework for digital assets in the US. We urge congressional leaders to prioritize swift action on this legislation to solidify America's global leadership in the blockchain economy, said Megan, the spokesperson with Stand With Crypto. So, the US Senate is preparing for the Clarity Act. The US Senate just passed the Genius Act for stablecoins. Incredible news. And now they're getting ready to pass, essentially, the Clarity Act, which brings clarity towards the crypto space, which means no more gray areas for banks or institutions after this act gets passed, which means banks and institutions can get involved, which is one of the biggest positive news you could pretty much hear. But again, with everything else that's happening around the world, these types of news are being overshadowed. Now, moving on from the Clarity Act, which is also being essentially looked into and going to be passed by the Senate, to Standard Chartered Bank. Before we talk about Standard Chartered Bank, let's go inside the comment section first, and then we go straight to Standard Chartered Bank news. And it's quite positive news from Standard Chartered Bank, but let's go inside the comment section first, and then we go straight into the next news. Cryptodon says, I get the regime might be evil, but I don't think you know about genocide. I do know, trust me. And trust me, you don't know what's happening on the other side. But I do know about that one. Can we please line the mute? Yes, we can. Let's move on from that. That's been happening for the last 7 years, so you have to understand our side. I understand your side, but you got to understand my side too. Regime change has to happen for Iran, but Benny Boy slaughtered hundreds of thousands, and I agree 100%, but the other way around, Iran is behind a lot of it. There's too much. I'm not going to be saying because we're going to change the mood. It's the present, yes. Shelly, let's go. Let's try to leave politics out or keep it simple and light. I'll keep it simple and light instead. We can't keep politics out because politics is pretty much the core of every market space. Politics is the core of every market space, but I could keep it light instead. Hi, Miles and family. I wish you would continue with all the information. I just takes one sheep. Hi, Miles and family. I wish you would continue with all the information. It just takes one sheep. Yep. Shirley, let's go. Frank brother, let's go. Krypton says, yes, keep it about crypto and making money. Leave politics out. We have to keep politics in because it's the core of essentially the market space. Politics is the core of the crypto market, the stock market, the real estate market, the world market, and everything else to do with it. Anything that happens in politics affects the world markets. But we can keep it light. Hi, Miles. What's your views on... hi, Miles. What's your... stick more towards... Hi, Miles. What's your views on KTA? Will this have any impact whatsoever on XRP? Adi, to be honest, I don't know what KTA is. I don't know what crypto project that is. I've never looked into it, so I can't give you a perspective on the matter. But leave a comment or message me on X, and I'll take a look into it for you and give you a better perspective on what they're doing. But I don't think KTA is going to have any impact whatsoever on XRP's price. What's going to have an impact on XRP's price is regulations, utility, and so on. Not KTA. Without even looking into it, but I'm still going to look into it for you. Direct message on X. I'll take a look into it. No problem. Shelly says, actually, the live is about everything that affects the crypto space. I agree 100%. Politics is core, absolutely core to the crypto space, stock market, real estate market space, world market, and so on. When will XRP go up? Says Johnny. Been long time, no moving. Johnny, there's a lot of things happening in the world right now with the geopolitical tensions, the tariff situations, the Chinese situations with trade deals with the United States, and so on and so on and so on. And then the Fed on the cherry on top coming out and saying no rate cuts. But at the same time, we're having a Genius Act being passed, a Clarity Act being looked into to be passed by the Senate. So a lot of positiveness is happening, and more contracts are happening. And yesterday, I revealed the announcement of Ripple essentially with ACH. So a lot of things is still happening. That's very, very positive for the crypto space. Again, it's just been overshadowed by everything else that's going on. But remember this. When this war ends, when the Iran-Israel war completely ends and a regime change happens in Iran, and then there's no more news from the Middle East in terms of war situations, the crypto market is going to react to everything it didn't react to. So the crypto market is going to react to the Genius Act news, to the Clarity Act news, to the partnership news, to the contract news, and so on and so on. It's going to react to all of the news. It couldn't react in a positive manner because it was too much happening around it in terms of geopolitical tensions. The trade deals of China is happening between the United States right now, where they're trying to move manufacturing hubs to the US, and so on and so on. So the crypto market, it couldn't react, and it's not reacting, but it will react momentarily when everything is essentially done with, which is very soon. I mean, Israel is working at a rapid pace right now, taking out the Iranian government. So, quarter three still in the picture. Have you invested into the end coin? No. I'll be honest with you, no. Now, Standard Chartered. Standard Chartered Bank is looking into $23 billion in non-stablecoin real-world asset market space. Several banks and institutions are planning on getting into the newly regulated stablecoin markets. However, Standard Chartered STAN, in other words, is looking into $23 billion in non-stablecoin real-world asset markets. The investment bank expects that the number to grow significantly. According to STAN, although stablecoins dominate the tokenization of real-world assets, the bank sees signs of a broader shift on the way. However, the non-stablecoin real-world assets holds only 10% of the size of the stablecoin market space. If research reports, the bank said that the growth is essentially assured because of the improvements of regulatory clarity and the focus shifts to the asset that benefits more meaningfully from being on-chain. To unlock growth potential, we believe tokenization efforts need to focus on chain assets that are cheaper and or more liquid than off-chain equivalents, with shorter settlement times, or that essentially solve an on-chain need, wrote Jeff, the head of digital asset research at Standard Chartered Bank. The bank says essentially tokenized private credit has shown promises by offering faster payments and lower cost. It also said that the efforts to tokenize assets that are already liquid, like gold or US stocks, have not gone very far because they do not offer clear on-chain benefits. The Asia-focused essentially lender said it thinks that the private equity and liquid off-chain commodities will be the next place where non-stablecoin tokenization will grow. Alan, the executive vice president of T0, said the tokenization of real-world assets, especially those based on real estate or collectibles, is not yet something that can be done fully automatically. He said financial instruments, arguably, in particular, if it's also tokenized, can be fully automated. He also said that tokenizing physical assets needs the help of traditional market participants. Tokenization is one of the main uses of blockchain technology and is attracting attention and investments from TradFi worldwide. On the other hand, stablecoins are popular for transferring money internationally. Some studies show that the number of real-world assets has grown by a huge 260% this year. However, some business lenders, essentially leaders, have questioned the stated market size, saying that the sector is still too new and small. However, BlackRock, JP Morgan, and Goldman Sachs are already testing tokenized funds. In addition, governments like Singapore and Hong Kong are drafting clearer real-world asset-friendly rules. DeFi is also integrating into real-world assets to offer stable real-world yields. Boston Consulting Group, BCG, estimates real-world tokenization will become $18.9 trillion market by 2033. This would mean an average of 53% compound annual growth rate, CAGR, taking the middle ground between the report's conservative scenarios of essentially $12 trillion tokenized assets in the next 8 years and a more optimistic $23.4 trillion projection. The investment bank said that some places like Singapore, Switzerland, the EU, and Jersey have made progress on regulations. However, knowing your customers' KYC rules that aren't always clear remains a barrier. The research says that the chance to focus should be on assets where tokenization really adds value. The main problem is the lack of consistency in know your customer standards, that often essentially businesses operate in multiple markets to deal essentially with different rules and documentation requirements. Singapore and Switzerland are looking into the possibilities of tokenization and are focused on assets while tokenization of added value. On the other hand, the EU is working hard to strengthen its anti-money laundering framework, which includes making anti-money laundering essentially authority AML rules. Jersey is looking into the idea of shared Know Your Customers tool to make the process of verifying people's identities easier. So, this is actually quite of a big news as well, where Standard Chartered Bank is looking into the idea of non-stablecoin real-world asset market, essentially market spaces and so on, where tokenization is going to become a massive deal. Tokenization of vehicles, homes, everything around you will become tokenized and have some sort of value later on in life. And Standard Chartered Bank is looking into the idea of non-stable coins, so something that's not, when it comes to tokenization, it's not really involvements of stable coins, involvements of other, essentially, tokens to be in play in that matter. That's going to be a big one. Again, while the world is focused on a lot of other things that are very important that are happening right now, there's also this happening inside the crypto sector. Now, moving on from that to Ripple news. So, here it is. A Ripple ad is going on right now in New York. The Ripple ad on XRP RLUSD payments shine bright in New York City Times Square right now. Ripple has had a huge presence in New York City, and it's not lying, it's actual facts. Ripple has been mentioned, and essentially New York's financial departments have been invited, and they've done speeches at the Ripple Miami event when they talked about it. Ripple's RLUSD is the first stablecoin to get a full regulational, essentially, approval from the New York Financial Department Services, which is massive. So Ripple has had a huge presence in New York City, facts. And this, essentially, its interest in innovation and adoption of enterprises. Recently, the company placed a proactive ad in Times Square that carries the Ripple logo and the tagline, "Crypto means business and blockchain solutions that transform finance." It's an international location with one of the busiest places on the planet, and ensures that Ripple is already concentrating on enterprise essentially implementation, and highlights XRP as one of the actors within the changing field of digital finance. The billboard used to show the ad was enormous, an attractive digital display located essentially on 1540 Broadway that was about 36 feet by 24 feet. With close to 50 million people visiting the display every year, is an excellent marketplace where international brands can conduct a large number of people. Besides the Times Square campaign, Ripple has also widened its advertisement on Grand Central stations. It is also seen that the company being essentially aired in online advertisement platforms of stations and factors that essentially cement its pledge towards the development of varied audience platforms. Such planned advertisement campaigns indicate how Ripple is active in raising awareness and adoption for XRP. The way Ripple takes advantage of the prominent locations in New York City allows it to efficiently deliver the message of modern and secure solutions based on blockchain to international audiences. These campaigns will prove to be dominant in raising awareness and adoption of Ripple's XRP in the financial industry as the company expands. The ad says something on the lines of essentially that Times Square ad that carries the Ripple logo, and the tagline continues, "Crypto means business and financial solutions that transform finance are on Ripple," is what the ad essentially says. With XRP, and obviously at the bottom it says not financial advice and so on. But these are indications of what Ripple is doing and the hints that Ripple is giving you, where they're saying everything is going to be running when it comes to finance on Ripple and XRP, and RLUSD obviously being a stablecoin. And on that note of the Ripple ad news that's going around right now in New York City, in Wall Street, you could pretty much say we have reached the endings of tonight's live. But that was just another reassurance of Ripple talking about XRP, talking about its future, and pretty much saying to the entire world, we're about to change the game, and everything is going to be running on Ripple. On that note, we have reached the ending of tonight's live. If you're watching this for the first time ever, this is called the CMF Live. It stands for Crypto Mouse Family. My name is Miles, and I host this live that you're watching right now, Monday to Friday. You can tune to this live 10 p.m. where I talk about the most recent news that's happening around the world in terms of cryptocurrencies, CBDCs, AI, politics, regulations, pretty much everything you need to know about what's happening around you in this world and how close we are to a digital world. And on tonight's live, we talked about essentially Ripple's ad campaign and what they stated on their ad campaign, reassuring everybody on XRP and on Ripple's footsteps and movements. We talked about on tonight's live regarding the matters of Standard Chartered Bank and tokenization of non-stable coins. We talked about on tonight's live about incredible news of the Clarity Act, which is what is essentially very needed inside the institutional sector and the banking sector, so banks know which areas not to cross, which areas are essentially gray areas to not go towards. We also talked about on tonight's live regarding the US filing of the massive seizure of $225 million, one of the largest crypto busts in US history. We also went through news regarding Coinbase creating a Coinbase payment system similar to Binance Pay or Apple Pay. We talked about on tonight's live also regarding the matters of Christian Lagarde's European vision of the euros taking over the US dollars, is what her vision is as the president of the European Central Bank. We went through news regarding Durbit and Crypto.com accepting BlackRock's tokenized treasury as collateral. We also went through news on tonight's live regarding Chinese central banks trying to expand their CBDC yuan beyond China. We went through news on tonight's live regarding Bitwise stating that fiat is pretty much on the way downhill and that everybody should be jumping into crypto. And this is pretty much your last calling towards the crypto sector. We also talked about on tonight's live regarding the matters of the Senate passing the Genius Act, which is incredible news, but the market couldn't obviously react to it because of everything else that's going on. But once everything else comes to an end, the market will react to everything it couldn't react to. We also talked about on tonight's live regarding the Fed. We went through the bullet points of what was discussed by Jerome Powell, and it came to the conclusion that he still doesn't want to do rate cuts, and Trump still wants to fire Jerome Powell. Nobody blames him. We also talked about on tonight's live regarding the US Treasury stance against China's manufacturing dominance, which is adding another monopoly towards the market space. We talked about on tonight's live regarding the US essentially B-52 bombers that are right now essentially in Spain on the way to the war of Israel and Iran. We also talked about on tonight's live regarding the matters of Iran's leader rejecting the US demands and the warns of consequences, which is adding a lot more geopolitical tension towards the market space. The faster the Iranian government gets taken out, the faster the leader of Iran gets taken out, the faster everybody can move on with their lives, and Iran can have a new, essentially a royal family. Reza Pahlavi, the Shah of Iran, can come back. The crypto markets will be restored. The stock market will be restored. The world will just be a better place. The market will be a better place. The faster Israel does the job and takes out essentially the leader of Iran. So Israel, chop chop, take out the leader of Iran so everybody can move on with their lives, and essentially regime change can happen. The crypto market can restore itself, and the essentially stock market can restore itself as well. But honestly, thank you for Israel for helping out the people of Iran. Now, let's go to the conversation. Obviously, before we do leave, let's see where we're at. We're been a long time. No, we're here. Where does ACH stand against HBAR, do you think? Where do I think ACH stands against HBAR? I would say HBAR maybe has an edge over ACH, but if it came just to payments, ACH has an edge over HBAR by a mile. So HBAR could have an edge in different sectors, but when it comes to payments, ACH would have an edge over HBAR. But HBAR is more of an everything, ACH is only one thing. What happens if Iran wins the war? Iran's never going to win the war. I have a higher chance of winning the lottery 52 times than Iran winning the war. Does mean crypto stay down? No, it doesn't mean crypto's going to stay down. Someone shared the billboard ad in CMF, massive billboard. Yes, it is. Facts. Pablo says, night Miles and CMF. Pablo, see you tomorrow, sometime as usual. Good night, Miles and CMF family. Funky brother, see you tomorrow, sometime as usual. Great show, Miles. Thanks. Good night, everyone. Bull XLP, let's go. See you tomorrow, sometime as usual. Good night, Miles and all CMF. Great live and news. Let's go, JP. See you tomorrow, sometime as usual. Both XM and XLP will be big time. Let's go. Essential Thompson, facts. Absolutely. Good night, Miles and CMF. Carol, good night. See you tomorrow, same time as usual. Shelly says, thank you for your time each night. Much appreciated. Night and day, CMF. Let's go, Shelly. See you tomorrow, same time as usual. Wutal says, I'm trying to think where the light in the world is. Can't find it or think, even imagine it. Let's go. See you tomorrow, same time as usual. Good night, all. I'll see you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. Either way, thanks again for another brilliant live stream. I'm certainly glad that I was able to join the stream. Thanks and take care, everyone. Let's go, Thompson. Thank you so much to everybody that tuned in into tonight's live. This was episode 321 of the CMF Live. Episode 322 is going to be tomorrow at 10 p.m., the usual time, Monday to Friday, London time. Tune into it. And thanks so much to everybody joining us live from the CMF. that has liked and retweeted this live. If you are new and you liked and retweeted this live as well, thank you so much. If you're watching us on X, if you're watching us on YouTube, thanks so much to everybody who liked the live as well. If you followed or subscribed to me during this live as well, thank you so much. I will be seeing everybody tomorrow, same timing as usual. Everybody have a great day or a good night, depending on where you are around the world. CMF, love you all. And Ray, also, I forgot to mention, because we're so much into heated conversation, Ray, brother, thank you so much for the $5 donation as well, where you put $5 donation, all facts. Ray, thank you so much for $5 donation as well, brother. We're in some sort of heated question debates, and I didn't get to say your $5 donation. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for the $5 donation, brother. Incredible. Ray, see you tomorrow, brother, same time as usual as well. I will see everybody tomorrow. Good night, Miles. Khalid, see you tomorrow, same time as usual as well. I'll see everybody tomorrow, same timing as usual. Everybody have a great day or a good night, depending on where you are around the world. CMF, see you tomorrow, same time as usual, for episode 322 of the CMF Live. Love you all. See you tomorrow.